In this episode, we have Ricarda Betzing. Ricarda is a professional in the HR area who is former HR director of Santander and who has worked in the European Space Agency and the CERN, the Center for Nuclear Research. Ricarda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Juan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Today is actually a very special day because you are the first guest that I didn't know before personally. It's the sign that the podcast is reaching far. And the way we met was through LinkedIn, right?
That's
through
right.
The European Career Support Group. I remember I put a post and you said, hey, how interesting this podcast. And then we connected and I saw that you spoke 7 languages fluently. So I said, okay, this person must be interesting. I need to invite her to the podcast because I'm sure you have a lot of interesting stories.
I'll do my best.
You will do for sure. Okay, great. So to situate a bit the audience, can you briefly explain what are your areas of expertise, your background, your studies, etc.?
Sure. I was born and raised in Germany. I'm half German, half Indian. I spent all my school years in that country, and then I moved abroad, first to the Netherlands, where I spent some 10 years with the European Space Agency, moving from supply chain to HR, which is where I found my calling. I think supply chain there, you know, a thing or two yourself. Yeah. So HR, I would say, came to me as some sort of blessing. I hadn't really envisaged it, especially not during my studies, because all I wanted to do was become a corporate lawyer in the beginning. And then I had this sort of life-changing course in marketing, and I was hooked. So working at that time in, as it was called then, personnel, I thought this could actually be a very good combination, marketing, legal, and HR. And in fact, this turned out to be a very profitable endeavor. Having worked in the Netherlands, I developed or acquired a solid basis in talent acquisition and management. So this would be recruitment and development in particular. And I think the fact that I speak several languages and was in a very multicultural environment with over 15 member states, from all over Europe, that helped enormously. So in a way, these two factors kept escalating each other, and it was wildly exciting and very interesting.
How interesting, indeed.
Very.
And talking about the HR, I'm curious to understand you that you have a wide experience in HR. For example, what are the main areas a professional in HR can develop?
Right. I would say people usually have to deal with HR either as a candidate or as an employee, in very many cases in a not so very fortunate situation, which is a pity because there is so much HR work going on under the radar and very few people know about that. The prime disciplines in HR are in fields such as recruitment, development, so that would be talent acquisition management. There is HR strategy, of course. Ideally, HR is not only the executioner once all the decisions have been taken, but should ideally be involved in early decision-making, especially in nowadays culture where people and culture in our days are becoming more and more important. This being the case, I mean, I would say the abbreviation sort of gives it away already. It's not called human resources for nothing. So why not involve HR from the very beginning, especially in situations where companies may possibly not have so much, let's say, disposable finance to offer each and every employee a stellar career avenue. And therefore, if you're a little creative and if you want to devise recognition systems that function on a non-monetary basis, like a career path, for instance. That's where HR can deliver very useful impulses. Then, of course, there's the legal side to things. Not every, let's say, discussion goes peacefully. There may be situations that escalate, and at some point, HR without legal understanding may be a little lost. In the case of companies with a corporate lawyer, for instance, if that lawyer has sort of penchant for labor law, all the better. Usually HR has that. So many discussions or many situations can already be led to good conclusion without involving outside parties. But if really things escalate, then chances are HR really has labor law as a prime domain, or you need to go outside and then maybe find some arbitration agreement. Then, of course, there's the whole financial side. comp and ben. For those who maybe are a little shy when it comes to communication, they may find their calling in working with numbers. There is the admin, the processes side, which is becoming ever more important, especially if there's the sort of ICT sideline with HRS, with artificial intelligence, which is also conquering HR. Don't laugh. I'm really happy about that, because this means that HR can let go more and more of very menial, very repetitive, very admin tasks, and that frees capacity in HR so that the HR pros can really dedicate themselves to what they are, in my view, what they're meant for, namely, again,
absolutely.
this human aspect.
I only laugh because the other day it came to my mind a very funny meme saying AI talking to AI, because the candidate uses ChatGPT for doing a resume and the recruiter uses ChatGPT to evaluate it. So it's AI talking with AI and rejecting you, and nobody did a thing there.
But I mean, look at the good side. I mean, the candidate and the HR person in charge, they could go have a coffee together in the meantime while the two AIs are hacking it out. No, but seriously, I've been working in digitalization for quite a number of years, and I found this very exciting already from the get-go. And this dates back to the time that I spent already in Switzerland with CERN, more precisely, you know, the place that gave the world the internet, or the World Wide Web more precisely. And of course, I was surrounded by IT whiz kids all day long. And I mean, that in terms of AI sort of prototype, that was just stellar. And whatever idea or wish we could come up with in HR, we would really like this and that feature. The IT guys, they would
do it. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
I guess you've made a lot of interesting people at CERN. We'll talk about that later.
Right.
Still talking about HR. You're mentioning all these areas of expertise, and the thing that comes to mind is that everything is very specific and very local to the country you're doing business with, right? So if we talk from local to international, how can someone develop an HR career internationally?
Right. I would say some principles certainly do apply locally. Labor law, I think, is the most striking example. Take Swiss labor law and go to, say, Italy, or maybe, with neighboring countries, you would have that. And of course, the further away the countries are, the less congruence you would find. I mean, if I take Swiss labor law and go to the UK or Ireland or even further away, I think we can just forget about that one. But very many principles in HR apply no matter which country you go to. Recruitment, I would say the principles are universal. The methods may be different, but I think the concept and the principle behind, they are almost interchangeable. This goes for development issues as well. Sure, you have legislation which varies from country to country, but still, if you have a solid base or solid grounding in HR as a generalist, then usually you got what it takes to make it to a different country. If you couple that with languages, and of course a certain, either some base in country-specific legislation or specificities, and of course you have the eagerness to apply yourself and to just improve your experience, your expertise, then doors are open.
So what would your advice, without talking about a specific country, what would be your advice for an HR professional that wants to jump to another market, to another country, apart of languages?
Right. It depends on the market, of course. As you know, Switzerland has quotas. The immigration system is largely comparable to what we know from the US. In European Union countries, it's way easier because there you have free passage. So if somebody from France decides he or she wants to go to Denmark, usually no holds barred. With Switzerland is a little different. We have the quota system, but again, my experience is that, and I'm talking Switzerland now only, if you come from, for instance, a neighboring country, you usually have very little, if any, difficulties to land in Switzerland. And also, if you come from a country which is further abroad, if you fall into a category for which there is no such thing as a Swiss market or a Swiss, I don't want to call it army, of candidates or sufficiently qualified applicants, then chances are you might land a job in Switzerland.
And specifically for HR, for example, because I want to focus on how to help an HR professional who wants to move to a different country. Would you say that a part of preparing languages and, of course, knowing the language of the country where you're moving from, would you say, yeah, you need to study a bit the law in that country or the market in that country? What would be your top tip for that person?
My top tip would be ideally find yourself somebody who's already in the country and can either be your, in a way, your passepartout, person that sort of helps the door to go open for you, maybe can also recommend you, because that is mightily important in Switzerland. A lot of business is done on recommendation and personal knowledge, I think more so than in other countries I've been to. But even if you don't, that's not the end of the world. Inform yourself of what's going on in the country of your dreams. Make yourself familiar with the kind of legislation. I mean, this is the German-speaking part of the country. Don't let this fool you into believing that, okay, this is largely similar to Germany or Austria. It is not. Labor law here is very different from what I know from Germany, also what I know from Austria. So no, but there are, of course, similarities. And if you manage the language or if you master the language, that's already a big plus.
Mm-hmm. And talking about language, quickly, would you say speaking the local language is mandatory for an HR professional?
It's not mandatory, but of course it helps. And many people think, okay, Swiss German, German German, they must be almost like identical twins. That's not quite the case, as almost every German finds out once they land here. But if you show the openness, the willingness to adapt, that is usually a sure sign that you will manage to find your way in Switzerland.
All right. Thank you. Then, talking about your experience, and we go to the Netherlands for the first time, this international experience in the European Space Agency.
Right.
My first question is, why Netherlands?
I grew up in a multicultural background, or a multicultural home, and my father was a diplomat. He had been working abroad, evidently. He instilled some of this cosmopolitan spirit in me.
Uh-huh.
And it was my wish to really make my way abroad. So I saw a vacancy notice by the European Space Agency's Technology Center located in Holland and thought, this sounds really exciting. Why don't I give it a try? And the rest is history.
Yeah. And it must be the way I see it. The way I see it from the outside, it looks like a very demanding place for candidates, right? So what was your approach to getting a job in the European Space Agency?
Well, they have very strict rules when it comes to applying. You need to be a member state national, but then, of course, they are kind enough to also state who is participating or contributing to the mission, or in a way they're sponsors, because I'm sure you know that many of these international organizations are financed by a percentage of the member states' GDP. Mm-hmm. And that's why they take, of course, good care that some of their country nationals are also represented in the ultimate workforce. Yeah. So long as you manage or tick off that box, that's already a good start. For the rest, of course, the job requirements, the ideal candidate profile is very nicely laid out. So as long as you see, it's just like an ordinary job advertisement in a way. So if you tick the boxes, then please give it a try. Mm-hmm. I tried twice. First time I was too late and they had just closed the vacancy, but I thought, well, why should I let that stop me? And second time round, I was lucky and landed a job there. And it was definitely extremely exciting. Although I must say, being all of a sudden in an interview board, me the only candidate, and there was this sort of panel of 5 or 6 persons, I had a little bit of the jitters, but I think so did many candidates in my place. But it worked out fine, and in the end, I liked it a lot. And
I can see it in your face. I can see in your face that you're remembering how exciting it was.
It definitely was.
And the application process, for example, how was it defined? In which stages? Did you have to prepare any business case, for example?
No, that was relatively simple.
Uh-huh. Unexpected.
Surprisingly, yes. But I got the inkling of an idea when they invited me over, they flew me in, and they also sent me some sort of info package in preparation for the interview.
Wow.
Yes, and amongst other things, there was the annual report, and there were also a few leaflets. These are our achievements, and so on and so forth. So I thought, excellent, this will make a very good reading while I'm traveling, and in fact it did.
Okay.
So it definitely pays off. But then, of course, this is also an organization which is in the news ever so often. And for those who need some inspiration, I mean, usually it's enough if you have a look at the weather forecast, because that's what the European Space Agency does as well. I mean, not directly, but of course one of their contractors. So that's usually a good starting point if you run out of ammo, for instance. And I can say, having been in existence for almost 50 years when I joined, of course, this was a highly organized and highly structured body, meaning that also the recruitment process was very well organized and very professionally done.
Okay, I see, I can imagine. And for example, for someone who wants to enter into the European Space Agency today, what would be your tip?
It depends which area you want to go into. There's, of course, the engineering, the research and development side. There's also room for supply chain management, for instance, because evidently the European Space Agency, people there cannot do everything by themselves. They are in contact with industry all over Europe and beyond, because somebody has to build those satellites, and ESA just doesn't have the establishment for that. Test center, yes, but when it comes to all the manufacturing, the assembly, and so on and so forth, I mean, the sheer space that is required, forget it. ESA just doesn't have the means or the resources for that, which means that with a body such as that, there is a lot of job profiles that may be interesting, enticing for almost anybody. And to make it easier for young people to gain a foothold there, was in my time the so-called young grad or young graduate trainee program, where young engineers from all over Europe would be invited in for a year, maybe even longer, to learn the ropes before they landed their first real job after they were done with their studies.
Yeah. A graduate program, right?
Exactly.
I think these programs are great.
They are.
More and more international companies are coming up with these programs, and I think it's the best opportunity for you when you're fresh out of college. You still don't know what to do, what is your area of expertise, because these programs, normally they offer 1, 2, or even 3 years of rotations. It's not that you're doing the same thing for 3 years. It is that you will change different areas, so perfect. For you to understand what do you like and also what are you good at, which is important. And normally you also get international exposure because these companies are international and they invest in this program. So they don't mind you having 6 months over there and 6 months over here. Yeah. So I fully recommend it. Recently I did a series of posts with industry leaders in every industry like FMCG, banking, automotive, with companies that offer this kind of graduate programs to help people who are looking for a job abroad for the first time.
Yeah.
And you worked European Space Agency, and I'm interested to know the kind of profiles that you saw. Did you see anything in common between them? What would you say is the DNA for an engineer to be in the European Space Agency?
I would say, well, the typical mindset of an engineer.
But that's not enough. There must be something special.
Let me elaborate. I mean, or at least the way I see it. Basically to go a little further and don't just accept boundaries. A way to test boundaries and to move beyond those boundaries. Mm-hmm. We are typically talking R&D and application. So the R&D people are mostly the ones that dream up new projects. And the application folks are the ones that put what the R&D crew dreamed up into practice. So you should have the understanding of an R&D engineer, but at the same time also the sort of manual capacity or the operational capacity to be able to foresee how this can be done in real life, how this can be put into practice, whether these components will be the ones that make a satellite go up into space and stay there, and what will be needed for areas such as telecommunications or Earth observation, for instance, where the European Space Agency used to be a huge market leader, and that's where ESA really developed some sort of expertise and was first rate. And that, of course, means that you need to have the solid understanding from the scientific point of view. And like I said earlier, if you are a generalist in the beginning and then find your calling in one particular discipline, and then go deeper and become a specialist. It's very often also how this works with HR, by the way. Then I'm quite sure you are very well suited, especially if you also bring the sort of international mindset along and have this general openness, which is something I've been praying to candidates for, I'd rather not mention for how long exactly, but nobody expects you to know anything and everything from the word go. In fact, I think people much prefer it if you initially take in the ambience and everything that's being presented to you, and then start making your mark, rather than arriving and acting as if you were Mr. Hotshot and guys, now I'm going to show you how to run the show, or I'm going to tell you how to run the show. And if that is in your genes, then I think, yes, absolutely, you should apply.
That's a good one. That's a good picture. It's a mix of curiosity, of trying to really understand the root cause of things, of why things happen, and not just staying at the surface, with a pragmatical approach and understanding what is possible and what is not. So it's great talking about ideas, and it's also great to make ideas happen. So you need to be in that intersection and mix with a bit of humbleness, right? Like being humble. And
I would say
recently I was talking with a colleague, a former colleague, when we were working in Toyota, and this was the DNA in Japanese companies, to say that you don't know something, to admit it, and to have no shame in that. Say, okay, I don't know about this, but I have the tools to make it work, and let me come back to you tomorrow. That's the best answer that you can give in this kind of environments. If you try to act like you know the answer, and it won't work in this kind of environment. So good that you're bringing this up. I think this will help people who are interested in the European Space Agency. And before we close this chapter, you were mentioning international mindset and how this is valued. From your HR perspective, how do you think having international experience adds up to your CV?
I would say without the international experience I wouldn't be where I am now. I've been dealing with people from all over the globe, and that is something that, had I stayed in Germany or gone to any other country but only stayed amongst locals, I would in all likelihood never have acquired. And I think my life would be much the poorer for it.
And let's say if you're in recruiting and you're checking out candidates and you see, let's say you have 3 exact profiles with the same skills, the same languages, the same everything, but in the experiences that they have, one has international experience, the other one has been doing only local. How this ponderates, how the international experience adds up in the recruiting process?
I would say, to me, the international experience would suggest a certain propensity for more open-mindedness than tends to be, or maybe the case with somebody who has remained very local. This is, of course, highly generalized. I'm not saying that this applies to each and any person, but experience shows that a certain exposure really has a formative influence on you, and a higher or more pronounced degree of curiosity or intellectual openness usually is the consequence. I wouldn't take that criterion only, though. Always providing that I also see or have a chance to talk to the candidates and thus can form my own impression. Because even though somebody has been in his or her home country their whole life, doesn't mean that they have no aptitude, no desire to go abroad, and maybe this is their chance, while the other person may have had international experience, which may not have gone down so very well. So that in and by itself is not the only indicator. So this is where interviews, and I'm not talking about AI talking to AI, but face-to-face conversations, the type we are having right now, which is where this can be really very revealing and can make or break a possible future career with an international body. This becomes all the more important as usually it's not only HR interviewing the candidate, but there's usually somebody from the line as well. There's the hiring manager or the future direct supervisor and then maybe their supervisor. And there are a couple of other facets. So it's typically a very equilibrated and very wholesome impression that is being founded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that helps, of course.
I like your answer. I
Thank
like the fact that you pondered it in a positive way. And as you said, normally you will be more curious than the person that has stayed. But at the same time, you also need to speak with that person, because some people who move abroad, maybe they don't fully integrate into the culture, or it was just an experience and then they go back. But this experience still sells. That you still need to speak to the person to understand fully what's behind it.
I will say so.
I like it. All right.
Thank you.
So we finish with the Netherlands chapter and the HR chapter, and the next one is Switzerland. So
Yes.
in Switzerland, you have a long career, and you were also working in a very demanding for engineering space, which is the Center for Nuclear Research,
Yes.
the CERN. So first one is, why did you choose Switzerland?
I was at the time looking for a continuation of my career. Having done my MBA in the US, I thought I feel I'm really ready for a new challenge. And that is something that CERN provided. And I was thrilled because I knew CERN already. It's a sister organization of ESA, only bigger, way bigger in fact. And it's an area which maybe I'm less familiar with, because high energy physics is not something which turns up every night in the 8 o'clock news. But even so, knowing that CERN was a place where the World Wide Web was born is, of course, a very nice calling card.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to start about the beauty of Geneva and its surroundings, because I understand we have 1 hour.
Yeah.
And if I get started on that, I think we'll still be here tomorrow. But I can say that everything I had been hoping for, I would achieve with that move to Geneva, or to CERN more specifically, I found in spades. Not only are there, or were during my time, 80 member states or countries or states contributing to the mission. Member states, there were 20 plus. It was a virtual small town of something like 10,000 people throughout the year. And yeah, we had almost everything.
10,000 people working only for CERN.
On the site, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like a small village indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the only things that were missing, well, we didn't have prison. We didn't have, I don't think there was a supermarket. At least I never saw one. But for the rest, I mean, we had practically everything. And that was so amazing, especially since I hadn't met any theoretical physicists, let alone Nobel laureates in the flesh. And there, I mean, you could just see them.
And they're humans, right?
Yes, they are. Yes, they
They're
are.
normal people.
And of course, I couldn't know that then, but I'm quite sure you or some people in the audience will know the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly Penny, but I would say I definitely met some Sheldons, some Howards, some Rushs, and some Leonards, of course.
I can imagine.
It
So
was
the stereotype
wonderful. It was
is true.
wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
It was really wonderful.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And regarding the process, because I can imagine with these profiles that you're mentioning, it is super demanding, right? So what was the application process to enter the CERN?
It was pretty similar to what I knew from the European Space Agency, only that much of it was in French. Because, of course, much like ESA, CERN has 2 official or working languages as well, but French is way more pronounced than what I had in Holland, because there almost everybody speaks English. For the rest, I do...
Sorry, the full application process was in French?
Also in French. It's usually bilingual, but...
They let you choose, or you need to do French as mandatory language?
Well, you need to do French as mandatory language, especially if you're in HR, but at least you are lucky in the sense that you may choose in which language the interview is going to be predominantly held. So if you if you have a penchant for English, then of course, let's say 3/4 of the interview will be in English, but there will invariably be questions in French. And of course, it's not the end of the world if you don't know what to answer or you need to switch back to English. But of course, if you manage to answer the question in French, is all the better.
You still need to do, it's not like you can choose one or the other. It will be both of them.
Well, they will test you in the other language as well. Now, of course, for somebody from France, it would be the opposite thing, which is why some knowledge of English or the respective other working language is highly desirable.
Yeah, understand.
Yeah.
And was it the same for engineers, or was this specific to HR?
I would say for HR it was specific because being the people, of course, we needed to be able to deal with questions or issues in each of the languages. For engineers, depending on where you are, because each department, of course, has its own DNA. I remember working for or catering for IT department. I didn't even bother with French.
Yeah.
Whereas there were areas such as diplomatic relations or general secretariat at large, including the firefighters, who were predominantly French, at least the older generation. So had I don't know, regaled them to some sort of introduction in English, they probably would have looked at me a little funny, and there wasn't that.
I see.
But it was extremely enriching, and so was the interview. I think I was facing something like 9 people on the board, so yes.
9 people. And how many interviews did you need to do?
I had 1 interview in front of the panel. I actually did have some essays, and I needed to sort of defend my thesis in front of the panel afterwards.
Wow. So it was a lot of previous work.
It was. I mean, you get there and then you are faced with a sort of program. This is what we have in stock for you today. And then you get cracking.
Okay. And did you get any heads up before, or you don't?
Oh, no.
You know nothing about what's going to be asked?
From what I remember, I was the first. That's one of the advantages if you have a last name that starts with one of the earliest letters in the alphabet. So I was led into a room, given a piece of paper, which said, please could you, at the end of the interview, give a short summary of this on this and that topic. So while I was waiting, of course, I was cramming, what can I say, how can I phrase it, and so on and so forth. Then I had the interview, and at the end of the interview, they asked me, you were given that particular question, so what are your findings? So there was that. Afterwards, when I was done with the interview, I was led into another room where I was handed another sheet of paper for an essay, for which I had an hour's time. And in the afternoon, I had several individual discussions with panel members. And that was pretty much that one day, but I was called in for a second interview. Okay. So I was able to meet with the entire HR team. And I can tell you, I usually love to gab, as I'm quite sure you noticed. But when that day drew to a close, I was really done for.
Okay. So it was, if we say the total time that the interview process or the application process it was really 2 days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2 individual days, not consecutive ones. Okay. But altogether, I think they got a very solid impression of me. And shortly after, I got a phone call, the type that I had been hoping for. And then I joined the organization soon thereafter. And it was, without hesitation, the best experience ever.
Nice to hear.
Yes.
It's so good to hear this kind of application process, because the way I would imagine is a long, extensive application process where you test a lot of features about the candidates. Yes. But if you think the other way, it's like, okay, in this kind of environments, the candidates will be super prepared. So maybe if you're not quick enough or fast enough to give them an answer, maybe they will be hired by other companies, right? So you need to be quick.
Yes, absolutely. Now, of course, let's not forget, I was interviewed for a position in HR. The procedure that physics candidates went through does not quite compare. I mean, they were really, I would say what they went through must have been close to an X-ray examination.
Okay.
They had a panel of up to a dozen people, and of course all specialists, and they had a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm. And talking specific, for example, about this experience that you had in CERN, Switzerland, of course, is known for having high salaries, and CERN being this kind of public venture as well, I'm interested to know, does it correlate with the Swiss salaries as well? Like, for example, what was the salary range for an HR professional in CERN?
I would say the salary range or the comp and bend system at large doesn't quite compare, because taxation is very different from the outside world.
All right.
And that is very frequently the case. Also, when you check with the United Nations, for instance, they have very different comp and ben systems simply because they apply a very different kind of taxation because they cannot tax on one country's system or procedures alone. Therefore, they drew a compromise, and that means that they have a highly structured comp and ben brackets for each profession, depending on the experience, what you bring in terms of profile and possible added value to fields such as R&D or legal or engineering at large. And to that, they apply the tax rate that is commensurate with the job in question. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exactly compare, but I would say thanks to the fact that these organizations also offer this expat status because very many employees come from abroad, and in order to give them a little incentive to leave their home countries, there is a sort of, it's called expat allowance. Yep. And that is part of the monthly benefits. And this, of course, is not something that would be applicable in industry, although in some companies, especially in the engineering field or also in pharmaceuticals, for instance, you would have something like a golden handshake, meaning that you have a sort of onboarding premium to get the qualified and the desired candidates and give them a little financial incentive so they sign up with you.
Okay. So if we talk about numbers, for example, for a 5-year experience engineering position in CERN, what would be the salary range?
It's a little hard to say now. It's been a while after all, but if I had to give you a figure, I would say something like 5-year experience, you said. Altogether, I would say something like maybe 7,000 per month.
7,000 per month. That's gross, right?
That would be gross. Yeah.
Okay, gross, which is similar to the net because of the taxes status that you said. Okay, understand. Thank you.
So there would be deductions for, well, everything like pension fund and health insurance. And then there would, of course, be also this internal tax because basically the organization is, administratively speaking, running your entire life for you, which is very convenient because you don't need to look for anything such as insurance and really it's all taken out of your hands because it's so highly structured.
That's a good one. So
it is.
It's not only the money that you receive in your bank, it's also everything else that is taken care of and you don't need to pay for it because as you said, insurance in Switzerland is a thing. You need to pay a decent amount of money every month.
Yeah, and with an organization such as CERN, or in my case, way back then, ESA, this was all part of the internal tax system, which would factor in things such as Social Security, that accordingly the employees didn't need to take care of themselves anymore, which made life a whole lot easier if you come from abroad and haven't got the inkling of an idea of how the system works in Holland or in Switzerland or some other country.
Mm-hmm. I see from all your explanations that you have learned a lot about HR structure and HR strategy as well in these organizations where everything is thought in advance.
Yes.
From your point of view, what was the main difference of working in private sector versus public sector?
I would say private sector certainly has a different manpower planning than I've found with both ESA and CERN and also later FIFA. The private sector, and I take this as sort of parallel to the fluctuation curves that I mentioned earlier, react a lot faster. Usually because with bodies such as the organizations, you have committees that may take more time in arriving at a decision because decisions are usually taken not only on organizational or organization's top management level, but usually there is the Council of Ministers involved as well. Mm-hmm. Everything that has to do with major policies cannot unilaterally be imposed and executed by the organization itself, but usually needs approbation by the ministers.
So it's much slower.
Yes. So the process, almost by definition, is being decelerated.
Okay. Okay, I see. And I can imagine. I was more or less imagine that kind of answer. So everything is slower. It's more steady, but
Yes,
slower.
I would say so.
And okay, and that's about it in terms of professional. I think I have a good idea of your career,
Lovely.
and you've given useful tips for people who want to start an international career. I'm also interested in life abroad because one of the main topics about moving abroad is not only work, it's also which type of life will I have, the quality of life, how will I rebuild social life, friendships, etc. So, in your experience, what is the best and the worst about each country that you've lived in? Saying Netherlands and Switzerland.
Right. I would say what I truly liked is the international environment I was in, I lived in, I worked in. And it may be a little difficult to integrate at first if you don't know a soul other than your colleagues who are also international and equally lost. If you don't have any local friends because you only just arrived and maybe know very little about the country, don't know the language, and so on and so forth. But my experience has been very positive, and probably also because there were so many colleagues who were in a similar situation. So in a way that
that helps.
Increased cohesion. And it's been a very enjoyable period. And I think I said this earlier, one that I wouldn't want to miss for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the longer you stay in a country, the more you integrate. You go shopping, you read the news, you go to a movie theater, or maybe go out, or maybe you go to a sports club, or you have a family, and then your kids enroll in school. And sooner or later, you start developing or establishing your own private network. And from then on, I think it's really safe sailing.
Yeah, all right. We're reaching towards the end of the episode, but before we finish, I have 3 quick final questions that need 3 quick answers. The first one is, which was your favorite local food in the Netherlands and in Switzerland?
Oh, that's easy. Cheese.
Okay, yeah, they have good cheese.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in Switzerland?
The same.
Same for both? Okay.
Only that I would say I have a certain tendency to have Swiss cheese warm, as in the aforementioned cheese fondue. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good selection.
Oh, absolutely.
You cannot miss.
Or just dairy at large, and I'm happy.
Yeah, true. Dairy in Switzerland, I believe it's amazing. Like really a normal yogurt. Here it is. I could truly feel the difference when I arrived.
Let's please not get into this any further, or else my stomach will start growling, and then we have to interrupt the...
And it's time for dinner. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I'll go for the next one.
Right.
It is one book that you recommend.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
A Mockingbird?
Uh-huh.
I don't know the title in Spanish. I can give you a brief description, and I'm quite sure you know it as well. They also made a movie, and the movie is just as good as the book. It's about a lawyer in the Grand Old South. This is in the early 1940s. And he's a widower with his 2 children who are coming of age. And he has to defend a colored man who has been accused of attacking a white woman. Now, this being the South, you can probably imagine what are the odds of him.
I think I've watched the movie, yeah.
The movie is with Gregory Peck.
I think I've watched it, yeah. It rings a bell now that you're mentioning it.
And that movie and the book, I knew the movie first. And we're really going back in time here. But this is something which has moved me immensely. I mean, it moved me immensely the first time I saw it. And really, I was in my youth then. And it's been that way ever since.
Right. Interesting. And the last one is the best advice that you ever received.
Be yourself.
I've also heard that advice in a previous podcast. And it sounds so simple, but it is so powerful because it's important. Yeah. I mean, once I heard being yourself, you expel the people that don't like you for being yourself, and you attract the people that like you for being yourself. If you fake a different personality and people like you for that fake personality, in the end, they're not liking you. Exactly. And you're also expelling the people that would like you for you being you. Yeah. So
absolutely.
It's a good advice.
Yeah. And in the end, I mean, the exact words were stay the way you are, but I literally translated it into be yourself. And I strongly believe that you're not doing anybody a favor, really. First of all, you're negating your own character. Yes, of course, everybody wants to improve themselves, but that's not the idea here. I mean, if I were to act like somebody who, I don't know, I'm vegetarian, so I'm not even going to pretend that I wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be a carnivore extraordinaire. And I think that wouldn't help anybody.
Yeah. And the more you are yourself, the happier you are as well, because
Absolutely.
you're doing stuff that you like.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's something that you exude as well. So like you said, other people are going to pick up on those vibes. And if it's the right people, you have friends for life.
Exactly.
In the best possible case. And the ones who feel turned off, well, maybe they weren't your crowd anyway.
All right. Thank you for the tip. I could keep talking about this forever, but it's time for dinner and it's also time to finish the podcast. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much, Ricarda.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
If you enjoyed this conversation, follow me and share it with someone who wants to move abroad. And if you are on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, please like and rate the show with 5 stars. It helps me a lot more than you think. Thank you very much and see you on the next one.